Today in Austin Stories, OP's deceased parents are forced to join the HOA, by the HOA, but not if OP can help it. His lawyer comes in, they just clean house, and they find some dirty secrets about that HOA. And then next up, the HOA completely gets dissolved by the smart homeowners who know the bylaws. All my videos are in podcast form, so check out the Austin Stories podcast on your local provider or the link in the description below. Here we go. Father and mother died, and a lawyer is saying their property joins an HOA after their death, posted by Freepik and Spaz. My father moved into a rural area in 1980, a few years after I was born, and soon came my sister. They stayed there ever since. We grew up and so on and so forth. Dad died in 2012 and Mom died in 2018. My sister moved away in 2002 to get married and have kids and so on, and she doesn't want to be involved in the affairs since I'm the eldest son and she lives 3/4 of the country away. Over the years, the area was developed and is now more of a suburb. Either way, I take possession of the house through the will, affairs of the estate, and so on. Basic total control, nothing to worry about. I get a letter in the mail in February that my parents agreed that after their death to sell the house through the trust to the HOA, and the property would be up for sale. I find no such documentation, and my demand to the lawyer, which is a legit licensed lawyer, is going unanswered to provide the written documentation. I've left a few messages with the admin there, but I'm not putting any effort into it if they are not going to respond. I am not one for sentimental value, and I really am not attached to the house, so if they want it, the price is going to be dictated by me, not them. I live a couple towns away, and I have no interest in moving in. My house is bigger, or even thinking about keeping it. Firstly, my dad was getting senile and might have agreed to something, and my mom is a pushover and might have agreed to something too. And if it isn't in writing, does it mean that it's useless? What if they just do come after the sale? Should I ask for the top dollar and or maybe just fight it, making it a non-HOA house in an ocean of HOA property? After receiving my green slip back and leaving multiple voicemails, I finally got a letter in the mail, but it was basically saying it was a verbal agreement. Not gonna fly. Good luck, HOA, because I'm sending in a letter today demanding an in-face meeting on the property with the lawyer, HOA members, or I will be asking the Board of Zoning to change it so I can install a wastewater treatment facility. So, after receiving a certified letter at the end of April from the HOA's attorney, he basically ignored me about the verbal agreement details. I contacted my corporate attorney, who I've known for nearly 2 decades now, and he's got a Connecticut bar license, which is the state that we're in, so he'll help if I need him to. After not hearing from their attorney for over a couple of weeks, leaving calls and messages with his admin, I realized that I was not going to get what I wanted, which was literally to talk to the guy and get the HOA's documentation. So, one last college try at the end of April, and nothing still. I got crap to do, and now all I got is a slab and some overgrown lawn, which, with the coming of spring and the constant rain, is turning into a mud pit. I live 2 towns over, and I don't have time for this. On May 3rd, I sent a notice to the surrounding houses that construction was to begin on a new sewage treatment plant and to contact the HOA board for more information, knowing it would take USPS a day or two. I brought the dozer back on a flatbed and planted it in the driveway where you couldn't miss it. 8 a.m. on Tuesday the next week, I got a call from an HOA representative wanting to argue with me in regards to this new plant and so forth about like property rights and ownership and so on. Not gonna lie, choice words and yelling ensued, ending with, "If your dang lawyer would call me back, we wouldn't be having this discussion. Good luck with the smell." Keep in mind, nothing filed with the town, no real desire to create a sewage treatment plant, but if you want to ignore me, good luck. About 45 minutes later, I get a call on my cell from an attorney, and I swear I was talking to a hostage instead of a lawyer. I told him I will see him at my parents' address at 3 p.m. and we'll finish this deal one way or another, and also bring a laptop. He wanted to argue about not officially meeting in an office and blah blah blah, and I just hung up. That was on May the 7th. I knew full well why I chose to send the letter on the 3rd, that because on Wednesday coming up, the HOA board has its monthly meeting, so I wanted it on that agenda. For about an hour, calls would come in from the attorney's admin wanting to change it to his offices, wanted to work this out by mail, blah blah. Nope, 3 p.m. on site. I called my attorney, and he luckily was out of court by 11 and would come down. I had lunch with him, and then we headed back to the property. I grabbed a couple of lawn chairs, a folding table from my house, and my attorney brought a laptop and a printer. If you know my attorney, I've known him for decades now, and he is a no bullcrap, let's get it done, no mercy kind of guy, right from law school. He went from corporate IP to family law, and he dabbles in real estate. He's a really good guy to know. 2:55 rolls around, and they show up. The lawyer and 2 board members, one who looks like he should move to God's waiting room, and the other a mid-50s kind of guy who's probably an orthodontist. We all make introductions and sit, and I say, this is how it's going to go. You want this property, and I want to sell. I am tired of the games and the non-responsiveness. In the next 15 minutes, you are going to buy this property pending approval, the HOA board majority, and you can do whatever you want with this place. You'll own it, free and clear. The orthodontist speaks up and attempts to say, as conveyed to us by past board members, that your father advised us that the property would automatically be transferred to the HOA upon your parents' death. He actually sounded articulate and with some authority. I like him. So I say, yeah, what documents do you have to support that? Nothing, just witnesses. And he goes into a discussion on how it was told to them by board members and that their unresponsiveness was because they thought they were in the clear and no reason to work with me because it was all legal, blah, 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 and that they were going to get the property by some court decree shortly. I look over to my attorney and he looks back. Well, fortunately for you, that's at least 50% true. You'll get this property, but it's not free. Brass tacks, this amount of money you pay, all closing costs, and you'll have my signature the minute you have approval. We'll facilitate the docs and the routing wire information. The eyes of the crypt keeper and the ortho went wide, and he said, that's a lot of money. Well, we'll have to bring it to the board to vote, but I'm not sure. Good enough for me. We have some preliminary docs and an official letter to present. I looked over at my attorney and was printing the docs away on the table. The lawyer says, well, it'll take up to 30 days and the bank check will take as long for an entity of this type if this is approved. My attorney says, the best thing I heard in a long time. Love you, Mark. We have e-file capability with 3-day turnaround. Filing to the state, towns, and wire transfers takes no more than 15 minutes unless the feds are backed up. There's no title issue, no liens, no environmental or waste removal issues. It's yours to enjoy as you see fit. I'll be available right after the HOA meeting to file the docs and Tuesday to receive the transfer. That's why he gets paid. He hands over the docs, standard P&S with the amount just typed in, with our cover letter for the board. I grabbed the ortho's business card. Apparently, he's a school admin, and the other guy is a retired electrician, and the attorneys as well. Well, that board meeting went well. I was told by a resident that it was a lot of arguing about not having documentation, wanting to actually challenge my ownership of the estate and property in court, and eventually the amount. Yeah, I asked a lot, but then again, they could have countered, and well, they didn't. It was not a good meeting, but in the end, it was approved. Apparently, another lawyer who was a resident basically told them that they had no standing and that I could do whatever I want with it, with or without the board's approval. I don't know if the HOA lawyer was there. My lawyer dropped by at 10:15 p.m. at a Pub 99 and I signed the docs for the final P&S, and we had beers as he filed online. He said I would get a copy in a week and would file paper copies with the town, but the deal is done when the money is transferred. Today, 8:15 a.m., I got a message that the HOA initiated a wire transfer, and around 8:45 got confirmation of the receipt of funds. My parents bought the place in December 1980 for $28,500. It served us well, and I flipped it for nearly 27 times that. It was a good home, but you do have to move on. It'll be built or turned into a park or something, but alas, it's over and done with. Most of it is going to my kids' college and technical school tuition, and the rest to my sister for her kids. Thank you, Dad. Now this is very important. Clueless User 37 said, Mark made you $769,500. Mark hopes he gets a cut of it. An update to the update. Time passed like it does, and the property did get a house on it, a yard, a fancy fence, and a manicured lawn. Well, COVID hit, and no one was available for anything, and I had no reason to visit the area since it was not owned by me, and my kids had no idea what it was about. Until last month, I was driving through because the highway that connects my town to the city I work in goes straight through my old town. I stopped in to get a tire pressure check, which there's a nail in the sidewall, but it was in the inner wall. I put some air in the tire, and then I got some drinks, and lo and behold, one of my old high school friends was working at the Cumbies, and I haven't seen her in decades. She didn't know me for an instant, but her name tag gave it away to me, and we started talking. I was in no rush. Apparently, the HOA that was running the place got caught in some shady dealings with some monies. The board members about 2 years previously were asked about the HOA financials, the distributions, and so on, and all got tied up in some legal quagmire due to them not producing these reports. Apparently, some of the board members were embezzling and overcharging the HOA from their friends' companies that did maintenance and services for the HOA and its members. Someone got smart and started asking questions, started to press their rights, and it eventually, I was told, ended up in court. It only got resolved mid last year, but after her friends got to find out they had been overcharged and overpaying and writing off things that should have never been done without any kind of approval. It's currently being overseen by a judge at the moment, but it does look like some of those people are going to start going to the Gray Bar Hotel for a while. I was telling her about my parents' place and how we used to take our bikes down the street and so on, and she told me that the street is completely demolished and replaced with a double-wide street and so on, with houses on both ends. They want to put in a gate, but the town said these are streets that are maintained by the town and you cannot prohibit free access, which was another garbage show as well, which was at the town about 3 years back. That HOA was just a hot garbage fire, and what eventually did them in was poor accounting, embezzlement, and cronyism. When I looked for my first house, I made it very clear, absolutely no homeowners associations, no radon, no leasing, etc. That is a quagmire of hate and anger that you don't want. The more I read into the history of an HOA, I realize that it was formed to keep minorities out of an area, and there's still a lot of deeds out there that have these weird no minority or African American stipulations still built into them. I don't get it, and I don't want to. I thought it was hilarious, and that tire eventually cost me about $200 to get replaced. I mean, this is amazing because this is $750,000. Now, $20-some thousand then is not that much now, but if you have almost $1 million in today's money, you drop that into an index fund or something, you let it sit there for a while over 20 years, you're going to be sitting pretty by the end of that. You could even put this with your existing retirement account and just retire off of it, depending on your age and your assets, what all that you have. This is an amazing story because OP stuck to his guns, did not give up, knew the rules, and so do I, and just completely delivered on that HOA, not giving in to their fear-mongering and evil factor, but standing up for the truth. And Mark left his mark with OP, and they just completely nailed it. And then it just gets worse and worse to find out they're embezzling and stealing funds and having all sorts of just corrupt, fiery junk in there. And then OP, just bravely enough, has always stood up to them and come out on top. Way to go, OP. What better way to say FHOA than to dissolve it entirely, right? Posted by Drop Bear Airstrike. So, a handful of years back, a family friend used to live in an HOA. One month, the board sent a notice around that they had voted, without any resident input, to update the aesthetics of the neighborhood and required all street-facing walls to be repainted one of the 3 colors that they had chosen. Naturally, the residents were incensed that their dues would be used for what amounted to a demonstration of power and a vanity project. The HOA claimed the move fell under their authority to preserve the upkeep and maintenance of the neighborhood. However, while actually reading the bylaws to see if the board had the authority to enforce such renovations, one of her neighbors noticed that the HOA could be dissolved if the motion was brought, seconded, and approved by some fraction, let's go with 2/3, majority vote of all the residents. Fast forward to next month. Virtually all of the residents attended, which made the board uneasy because meetings were typically only attended by a handful of people who had specific items of interest that they wanted to be present for. The whole crowd sat quietly through the agenda, and when it came time to open the floor for new motions, her neighbor brought the handbook to the podium and said, I'm paraphrasing here, I motion to dissolve the HOA under Section X, subsection Y, paragraph Z. Family friend says, I second that motion. Neighbor goes, all in favor? The whole room, unanimously, aye. At this point, the board was spluttering, trying to figure out what had just happened as, job done, some of the residents had already started filling out. Apparently, it took a bit of time for neighbor to explain to the secretary the nature of the motion and the fact that the residents far surpassed the quorum and majority necessary for a legitimate vote. The secretary reviewed the handbook and told the chairperson that it was all according to the letter of the bylaws. The chairperson tried to bluster and tell the room that they had to come to order so they could discuss the matter further. Apparently, the neighbor told him something along the lines of, come to order to discuss what? The HOA meeting is over because there is no more HOA. We just dissolved it. I asked family friend if this was it. She said the chairperson ended up sending a letter around telling them that, I recognize you're all very upset, but let's not make rash decisions. And that they could discuss making some changes to the renovation plans. But it was right there on the record. The HOA had been legitimately dissolved, so no one showed up or responded, and eventually the board gave up trying to regain power. What we have just witnessed in these few minutes is literal malicious compliance, nuclear revenge, FHOA insanity, because all of these things factor in. They go look up the rules, they know the rules, and so do I, and they know that they can take down the HOA for being just shady and trying to take money and do their own little thing with it, right? You know what? The people stood up. They said, we're not going to take this HOA anymore. We're not going to take it. No, we ain't going to take it. And they shut him down forever. Way to go, OP and everybody. Did you catch those two musical references, by the way? Let me know if you did. Dumbest HOA Karen president ever gets herself fired because she did this to OP. You gotta hear this fallout of this crazy story. Click the video on your screen to go there now, and I will see you there.